radio show.
Perfect. Can we? I think we're talking. We're talking. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I think so. I do a big wine clap. That's how I.
Is that how you start?
That's how I start. It's really, as you know, just to be able to line up the audio with the video. But now I turn it to like a big celebration. Here we go. I think that's.
Whatever works.
This is episode number 12 of the Just Ask podcast. Really happy to have Patti Berardi join me for episode number 12. I can't believe 12.
12. Wow.
This is awesome. So Patti is the producer from Rogers TV. She helps us produce Think Millennial TV among a wide range of other shows with Rogers. So Thank you for joining me, Patti.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited to hear your perspective on everything as far as speaking, hosting, people getting better at hosting and interviewing. You deal with so many people and you see so many different people come through the studio.
Yeah,
on a weekly basis.
We have quite a few people come through, and people at different levels and comfort levels in front of the camera. And so yes, it's always fun to help people develop their presentation skills.
That's awesome, and I've really appreciated it. It's been a lot of fun and we're coming up to the end of season 2.
Yes, 2 seasons, and it's flown by.
Yeah,
a couple kickbacks and planning our 3rd. So the fun never stops, I guess, right?
No, never. So let's jump right in. How did you get started in TV?
Well, it started, I became interested in video production in elementary school, believe it or not. And I took not a co-op, but an enrichment. Remember they used to do, I don't know if they still do that, but back in the late 80s, they did enrichment. And so I went to Farringdon School, which is no longer here, and did a video production enrichment, and came across a teacher who was a teacher at PJ, which is the high school I ended up going to. And he saw something in me at that age in grade 7 and said, "Hey kid, when you come into PJ, take my English media class." And so I took his English media class in grade 10. It was a grade 11 or grade 12 course, and I was 16 and everybody else was 19, because back then it was people would go 5, sometimes 6 years of high school. And then I got good at doing video, and he encouraged me to take a co-op at Rogers, which I did. And then I continued volunteering and eventually got hired, and that's it. I haven't left.
Yeah. That's amazing. It's really cool that it's been a part of like your whole life has been.
It has been, and it's funny because I've actually been here more than half my life, which is kind of scary. But at the same time, it's really become a part of who I am. So there's who I am outside of Rogers, but it's become so much a part of my life that it's, I think, a little bit tied to my identity now.
Yeah, and it's something to, do you, to put on a show, to put on the weekly shows, there's potentially new guests coming through, and there's a varying degree. Some episodes we have that are fully planned out, and some it's like we don't know. What's it, how do you prepare for every single show when you don't really know what to expect, I guess? Well,
a lot of it is we have volunteer community producers, so most of the time they lay the groundwork in finding guests. Often, for a show like yours, there's different variations in what people do as a community producer. Some come in, they do a little bit of content suggestion, but then they ask me to confirm it for them. And then there's other producers that they book everything themselves, and I just take care of the technical. So there's varying degrees of that, but along the way I'm always here as a resource to say, oh, here's a name that you can try, because after as long as I've been here, I usually know most people. But there's, to prepare for it, it's more or less keeping track and making sure that things are booked, because the more advanced notice you have to a guest and time to prepare, and make sure that you have background information sent in so that your hosts are prepared with the best amount of information that they have. There's nothing worse than going into an interview and not really knowing the person's history or story, because you want to prepare so that you can ask them questions to best tell what it is that they're wanting to share. Yeah,
and it's definitely, I mean, it's cool because we'll be doing the show and then you're the voice in our ear.
Yep.
In the little headpiece, and it's so interesting. Like we feel, as the host, I feel like there's a lot of balancing that goes on between having a conversation with our guests
Right.
and trying to listen also for the time cues.
Yeah, it's
but
tough.
at the same time, you're also balancing the voices from like the rest of the studio.
Yes.
Yourself watching the timeline so that we hit the commercial breaks,
Right.
as well as paying attention to the people in the green room.
Yep.
And then also the guests and keeping track of the conversation so that you can chime in or like
it can be hectic.
dig a little.
And I think too, my goal is always to be there as a backup. If I see a host is maybe sometimes interviews aren't easy, and
Right.
some people aren't as comfortable being interviewed, and I can see if a host isn't quite getting the right things out of someone, then I'll chime in and say, what about this? And quite often it's funny because I'll say, blah, 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 blah. And then the host will repeat what I've just said. And that happens, and it's okay because that's my job, is to be here to support the volunteers and the hosts as well, but also make sure that we get the best content to air,
Right.
because what stories we tell are important. And you can tell sometimes when a host is floundering a bit, and it doesn't happen a lot, but it's always easier when you're just listening as opposed to being in the hot
Right.
seat.
Right.
So
Yeah. And do you get nervous before the shows happen?
sometimes I do. When we do kickback, I get really, really worked up about it, because people coming on kickback are sharing such sometimes sad stories, and you really want to make sure that we do the best that we can with it. And I think that the pressure we put on ourselves for that 12 hours live is a lot, and so it does carry with you through that weekend leading up to, because you want it to be the best that it can be.
Right. And for that project, 12 hours of live television.
That's a lot.
Thank
Crazy.
you so much for partnering with us on that one.
I know, but it's just, when you came to me with the idea, I thought, I don't know how I'm going to get my manager to approve this. And he was wonderful. He said, hey, if you guys want to do 12 hours live, no problem. And I think that's what is the great part about what we do here, is we don't have such a rigid schedule. You know, other news stations couldn't do that. They couldn't wipe out all their other programming for 12 hours and just do one project. I mean, you'll see the odd telethon or whatever, but we're just like, this is what we're going to do today.
Right.
And I think that that's what separates us from regular other types of media. And it is fun. Kickback's been an amazing project to work on. And I think as we go on, we'll just keep getting better and better at it.
Yeah, and I think the way that like we can improve the most, I think now, because we've got it not down to a science, but we've kind of figured out like the good steps, the nice steps to take to really plan it out, is encouraging our hosts to ask the proper questions. Can you just speak a little to like what makes up a good question?
I think one of the things is being prepared. One thing that when I'm coaching someone on interviewing, is I say, be a better listener than a better talker.
Right.
Because what happens is, in an attempt to sound professional and good at what we do, we'll sometimes in our question give that person's whole history and everything that all the good stuff that we want them to tell them, because we want them to know, hey, I researched you.
Right.
And then quite often we leave them with not much to say. So I think the art of interviewing is the art of listening, and being an active listener and having some points about what you want to touch on. You certainly want to make sure you hit the who, what, where, when, why, if it's an event, but listening, and when somebody says something, catching and then asking another question off of that. And I think for me it comes naturally, because I've always asked a lot of questions since I was little. It hasn't gone away. But that is my best advice, is to not write out every single question beforehand. Have an idea, because what happens is, if you go down those 5 questions and they answer them in 6 minutes and you have a 15-minute segment, you find yourself backtracking. And you're so focused on, I got to ask this, that you're not really listening to what they're saying.
Right.
And it sounds like you're going into an interview without a safety net. But if you've done your research and you have your points written down, and just listen and just talk and just have a regular everyday conversation.
Right. And that's what we really try to create with Think Millennial.
Absolutely.
Is just that
It's
It's
authentic.
like we're hanging out in the fake
Yes.
living room. We get pizza in from her
Yes.
casa. And it's hopefully just a fun
And
time.
I think your guests are relaxed because of that,
Mhm.
because you guys will laugh at yourselves if you make an error coming
Right.
in and out of the break. And, TV has relaxed so
Mhm.
much over the years. Years ago, you would never see people having the conversations they do now. And, I mean, there's training to try to make your interviews conversational.
Mhm.
And it's kind of surprising because it used to be very robotic. It
Right.
used to be very factual and not actually reacting to stories and things like
Mhm.
that. And I'm glad that you guys have fun with your
Mhm.
show, because I think that people want to be a part of it. And we know it's not just millennials watching.
Mhm.
We know that everybody's watching. And I
Right.
think that's really cool too.
Yeah, it's been really neat to kind of get that feedback from people that, hey, da 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 da. Like, I know both my grandparents
Yeah.
all tune in and watch the shows in a variety of different ways,
Yeah.
but they're constantly learning things from it too. And it's really neat to be able to start kind of connecting.
Yeah.
As much as we are Think Millennial, we're pulling in
I
a
think
wide
you're more
range.
Think Community.
Yeah.
You could change the name of your show any day, because what you're doing is you're sharing stories of people in the community, and a lot of the time businesses,
Mhm.
which is the wonderful thing about your generation, is if the opportunity isn't there in a corporation, you guys make your own opportunities. And I think as somebody who's in my 40s, who's just past that millennial cutoff, I admire and I look to the stories of your generation, of that tenacity, because I was taught you get a job. If it has a pension, you never leave.
Right.
And those jobs aren't there anymore.
Mhm.
They're really not. And so for someone my age, I'd be fearful to become an entrepreneur at this point in my life. But, it's very inspiring to see that people are creating their own opportunity and not doing the whole, we're generation screwed and Brantford
Yeah.
sucks. And I think that that's what's really great, is
Mhm.
that everybody who comes on the show is sharing how they're making it a go of it and their struggles, and giving advice to somebody who might be just starting out or struggling a bit themselves.
Right. And you mentioned it there too, the importance of story.
Absolutely.
And sharing story. Can you speak a little to the importance of storytelling?
So storytelling is something that I always enjoyed doing when I did videographer work, is that human connection.
Mhm.
And you don't get into TV other than to entertain, inform, and educate, right? So whenever you can take that human perspectives, per se,
Mhm.
and really highlight from a person's point of view, show the story through their eyes, then you're connecting with your viewer on a different level. It's not just
Right.
the facts. And it's okay to go interview the experts and everything else, but when you actually have a person touched by that, sharing their experiences, people will connect with that more. And those
Right.
are the stories that they remember, and they call that sticky storytelling. I think that in the journalism days, that's what they called it. But if you watch the CBS stories, and you really hear the narration and how they talk about the person and their journey, and I'm all over that stuff. I love it.
Yeah.
And I don't get to do it as much anymore because we've changed how we do our content, but whenever I get the chance to add those in, and maybe that's why things like Kickback really connect with me,
Right.
because it is storytelling in a different way.
Right, and that's what the whole day is about.
Yes,
Individuals sharing their story. And I
Yeah.
think I don't know that we necessarily knew that when
Maybe
we first
not.
started Kickback, was that like how powerful that was going to be.
I think we had an idea, but until you actually start watching it and listening and seeing it, you really don't know what it's going to go like.
Right.
And I think the first year we were all exhausted after it. That knocked us out for like a week. And then last year, by the Thursday, we're like, hey, yeah, how's it going?
Yeah.
We can do this again. So yeah, you do learn as you go. And I guess the biggest thing for me has always been to try and find things in our community that maybe people don't know about.
Right.
And to give a voice to people that might get lost in mainstream media. The expositor here is really wonderful at finding those stories themselves. They have a small staff. They do amazing work, and they try, but we're going to get lost in the shuffle when it comes to the bigger networks. Unless there's a shooting
Right.
or an overdose, they're not coming to Brantford for those good news stories.
Right, yeah, and I think it's you just had one recently too. It was Friday night.
Yeah,
and
we did the opioid crisis.
Yeah, that was really cool to be able to be that reactive.
Yeah, and that's our flexibility in the type of work that we do. And one of my jobs is to look for those chances in the community where we can go live with something breaking in the sense that it's current and topical. We do have shows that touch upon that, but it's important that when you're connected to your community, I'm on social media, I see what people are saying. The feeling I got coming into Monday, coming into work, was that there were people really shaken at the idea that 3 people died over one weekend, and that there was somewhere over 10 overdoses. And
I think that was down towards London.
No, here there was 3 deaths here, 3 in yes, and then it sort of, as the week went on, we could see that it had spread across southwestern Ontario. And so the first thing I did was connect with Dave Carroll, who steps in and does these special reports for me. Great guy, and he has a journalism background as well. So we tend to love to work on those things together, and he doesn't say no to me usually. So, and I said, hey, we have to get the message of our mayor, of our chief of police, of our medical officer of health out there, just to reassure the community that there is something happening, because everybody, oh, Brantford, you're not doing anything. But there is, the ball's rolling. Right. Unfortunately, not quickly enough. They're aware of that. But there is stuff happening, and our whole point was just to reassure everyone that, yes, it's bad, it's gotten worse, but there's a plan to get out of it. And that was sort of the goal in doing that on Friday. No,
I thought that was awesome. And I think it's really neat when you look at live TV, because it adds an element of not being able to, like, whatever you put out there is out there, right? It's there, and being prepared for that and being prepared for anything is really important.
Well, you guys did live right off the hop. You just jumped in feet first or head first.
One of the ways.
Yeah. But yeah, I think when we can go live and say we're live, it just has that more urgent sound to it. And my thought was go Friday at 5, stream it to our Facebook page, because Facebook Live's been very powerful for us with your show, other shows as well. And just get in there before the news and do it on a Friday, because we know people over the weekend will have time to go back and look at it. And it did it. It hit almost 2,000 views in a few days just on Facebook Live, which is our goal, is to just spread the information that we can.
That's amazing. So, and that's something that I do like to ask is, like, what do you hope to achieve through the message and through the work that you do?
For me, it's I'm a catalyst. So people in the community have something that's important to them, and then I'm the person that can help them put it to air in whatever format that might be, whether they're a guest, whether they do their own show. Quite often, I have no problem approaching people that I think would be good show hosts and saying, hey, do you know what we do here? You can actually have your own show, Ben. And that's how a lot of our shows come, is through me, is I meet people in the community, and I think I tell them what we do, and quite often people don't even realize that, hey, I can do my own show. Right. And then that's it. And then we just start making shows. And then I meet more people through those shows. And so I think that's the best part about what I do, is being frontline, is I'm in the community. I live here. Yeah. I was born here and raised here, and so I have a different pulse on it than what somebody would if they were, trying to cover it from a different community. Right,
and commuting in, or just
or just not living here, right? And I think because I feel like the dinosaur of Rogers TV. I think there's a trust there from the community that most people have met me. They know I'll do my best for them, and I try. So I think they feel safe and comfortable when I approach them to do stuff like the opioid crisis. Like, they went live. Those 3, our mayor, our medical officer of health, our chief of police, didn't even bat an eye at going live at 5 o'clock, because they trusted that Dave and I wouldn't, lambaste them, and that we would give them a chance to speak their message in the way that they wanted to, which is what community TV is.
Yeah, exactly. What's it like for you to be able to provide those opportunities?
It's fun.
Like for me, for example,
I think it's great, because even though they say TV's dying, I don't think it is. I think there's still something magical about turning on the TV and seeing yourself on TV, right? It's fun. And now being able to use Facebook Live and being able to share our clips on social media, it spreads further. So, of course, I'm going to get excited when I can help people have that opportunity, or when I can go out and shoot something that has kids in it and you know that they're excited to show their parents and everything else. So, yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, I can tell that it's fun. Like I have fun every single week doing this, and the environment here, if anybody's been to our Rogers TV studios, they'll know that it's really laid back. It's family, like it feels like a family here, and it's been that way since I walked through the door at 16 years old. And so I think I've always tried to pay it forward, I guess you could say, what people did for me when I was 16 by seeing something in me and giving me a chance, because I was terrible on air when I first started. It was terrible. It was a train wreck, but they let me learn how to report, and now you could throw me in front of a camera to host a show and I'd be fine. Which I think it's interesting too, because a lot of people know you as Patti from behind the camera, right? Yeah. And you have a lot of experience being in front of the camera too. I've done
a lot of on air things over the years, and it's not my favorite thing to do. Sometimes, I don't say I hate it. Yeah. Sometimes I had to do it because it was just something that had to be done. But I prefer to put other people on TV. But in a pinch, I can definitely fill in if necessary. And I just like talking to people. Yeah. So it's a really easy thing to do. Yeah. It's but I always am critical when you see it back. You're like, oh, I make faces and whatever else. But
how important do you think it is to watch yourself back? Like
you have to. Yeah. I just don't like it. So I'm like, that's not where I'm going in the business. Right. So I'll just let it go. Yeah. But I will say I did a series a long time ago. I guess about 17 years ago now, we did a show called This End Up, and it was myself and Jonathan Clayton, who at the time was our volunteer coordinator. And we just went out through Ontario and just did fun stuff. And we got to be ourselves. And I think that's where I was most in my element, is not trying to be a reporter or do the serious stuff. Right. As much as I have the capacity, I'm more at myself. When I can just be myself and have fun with a guest, then I think that's where my strengths lie in doing on air. Unfortunately, I don't have time to do that because I'm busy behind the scenes, and we don't like to put our staff on air all the time either. We want to give those chances to volunteers. Right. So, but if I ever, win the lottery, I'll come back and volunteer to host a show.
You heard it here.
Heard it here first.
Do you have any tips for individuals that maybe are thinking about wanting to be on TV, or even just to get up in front of a room of people?
Yeah, so getting up in front of a room of people is a really different experience. I think I've always just tried to be who I am. I've never tried to be, I'm a speaker. Right. This is who I am, and this is how I speak, and I try to speak more clearly because I tend to talk fast and look at my audience, engage their reaction. And for me, I guess years, you just get used to it. But I do. Speaking in front of a crowd is a lot more nerve-wracking than TV, because I know that I can, unless I'm live, I know that I can redo it. Right. And I can look back at it and say, oh, I can make some changes here. But when I do go out and guest speak on behalf of Rogers, it would be similar to what I'm acting like with you. Right now. Yeah, I know at the end of it, I'm not absolutely terrible, so it's not like people will walk away and go, oh geez, she was awful. So at least I hope not. But I think it's tough. You have to be clear with your message and make sure that you have prepared and stay within your time, because the worst thing to do is have like a 10-minute slot and talk for 25, because people don't want to hear you for 25 minutes, at least not me. Maybe some other speakers they do. But
and that tends to be the direction that a lot of everything's going, is it should be more bite-sized.
Yeah, because consumption, whether it's listening to a speaker or watching a clip, people do not want to watch long-running things unless it's a drama or something like that. But they want little chunks, and they want all that information in that 3 minute. Even 3 minutes is a lot for storytelling's changed in news. The average story used to be 3 minutes. Now when you watch it, it's a sound bite of like 10 seconds.
Yeah.
It's just
the headline and then blah, blah, blah,
yeah.
blah.
And I don't particularly enjoy it.
Mhm.
I prefer to watch something a little more like a W5 or a, Dateline or something that's a little more drawn out, because I'm drawn to the storytelling,
Right.
not those quick snippets.
Yeah.
As I can see that on Twitter.
Yeah,
Or-
exactly. It's just
right.
like, here's 140. Although it's no longer 140 characters, is it? It's more than that, I
I
think.
think it's a little bit more.
Yeah.
But all I know is if I really want to get into a story, then I want to watch the more longer
Right.
reports.
Awesome. Well, this has been great,
It's
Patti.
been fun.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate the opportunity that you've given myself and Matt and all of our other hosts, and everybody, and all of the people, all of our guests that come on
Yeah.
every single week. I mean, to be able to provide that opportunity to them is really incredible, and it's been quite the journey.
The thing is, once we get you, you can't get
Yeah,
out.
you're hooked.
It's like you're hooked.
Yeah, this is actually where I live. I
Yeah.
sleep here.
Yeah, we don't let you go.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I'll just say this quickly, is we've had a lot of long-term volunteers because of that. And there's people that I'll call upon and say, it's election time. I know you haven't done on air in 4 years, but I need you back.
Yeah, yeah. Get
So
off the bench.
once you're good and you're here, then that's it. There's no getting out.
Awesome. Well, this has been Just Ask number 12 of the Just Ask podcast. Thank you so much, and we will see you next time. Thanks. Thank you, Patti.
Cool.
That was awesome.
It was fun.